Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Thursday, October the 16th. I am in the US where Rachel Reeves is making waves for the second day in a row by setting out the fact that she is going for clear tax rises in the budget and they will be trained on the wealthy. My name is Anne McElvoy from Politico.
And I'm Sam Coates of Sky News. Yesterday, in an interview with me, yards from the M25, the Chancellor confirmed that there would be tax rises and spending cuts in the budget, as well as confirming the UK risks being in a doom loop of annual tax rises. I still can't quite believe she said that. Today, she's been speaking to The Guardian. What is the purpose of those comments? Why did she say what she said? What does it mean? We'll have more on that in a moment.
From the M25 to the banks of the Potomac, but it's not just what she's saying, is it, Sam? It's how she's saying it that is standing out today. And in that Guardian interview, she says that raising taxes on the wealthy last year prompted bleating and scaremongering from people claiming that there would be a mass exodus of wealth creators from Britain and implying she's going to stand tough. It was all nonsense and exaggerated. Sounds to me like she's leaning into her base. That's our top story. We'll have more in a moment about what her calculations are and what the response is likely to be.
The other massive story this week that we've been following on this podcast is related to the collapse of the China spy trial and more generally Britain's relations with Beijing. Last night, the government published a trove of documents related to the collapsed China spy case. The Prime Minister was following through on a promise he made to Kemi Badenoch at Prime Minister's Questions. He published 3 statements by Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins. These are the statements that were sent to the Crown Prosecution Service in order to provide the government assistance in the trial that was later collapsed by the CPS. At its heart, he was saying whether or not China is a threat, and Collins wrote in the document that China was indeed a threat to our people, prosperity, and security.
Been quite the switch in Keir Starmer's approach to this. The playbook this morning is pointing out that he's abruptly pulling the transparency lever. But the documents also do reveal another leg of the government's position, namely that, quotes, the UK government is committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China to strengthen understanding, cooperation, and stability. And it is those words that are roiling MPs overnight, especially that emphasis on positive, as opposed to previous mentions, which were more nuanced and talked about a textured or layered relationship.
Right. Before we get to any of that, and we love Rachel Reeves on this podcast. We talk about her almost every day, and you are heading to Washington to spend some time with her after the interview that we talked about yesterday. So I want to sort of suck up all the vibe that you've got from being in and around that part of the world and in and around her. And just on the topic, my favourite topic in politics at the moment, the 20 to 30 billion pound black hole. Just to set up our discussion, it's worth pointing out that the Institute for Fiscal Studies have had a go at their estimate of the black hole this morning, and they put it at 22 billion. So they've added up higher borrowing cost, weaker growth, and all of those spending commitments that they've made since the spring, and they get to 22 billion, right? Huge figure. But that does not include the cost of abolishing the 2-child cap, which we expect to happen, and maintaining the freeze in fuel duty, and it would still leave headroom at £10 billion. So it sounds like it could be many, many, many billions more than 22. IFS Director Helen Miller said that for Rachel Reeves, the budget will feel like Groundhog Day, doom loop, 2 sides of the same coin. Which is it more in Washington right now? And more doom loop or more Groundhog Day? Or is it just a clear and glorious morning?
Well, it's certainly not Groundhog Day when I think back, Sam, to the last time that I came to Washington with Rachel Reeves. That was the spring meetings. And at that point, Peter Mandelson was still in his pomp. Lord Mandelson was our ambassador. We're now in an interim territory on that one after his abrupt resignation. And there was a sense then that Rachel Reeves was projecting stability, kind of middle way, I don't think we would have heard her talking about taxing the rich or the better off in the terms that we've just laid out at the top of the podcast with that really sharp language. She's been in my way or the highway mood. Very pleasant, by the way, when I bumped into her on the plane. I mean, we seem to bring out that side of Rachel Reeves. A very, very important point. I did notice that she's got a fetching red hair colour back, so she's rejoined me as a redhead. Keep ahead of the trend, Rachel. There you go. It's all the serious stuff on this podcast. I'm afraid that was like the main thing on my mind, chatting to her. But when we get down to the serious business here at the IMF, look, she's flanked by veterans, by Liam Byrne, talking about pensions reform. He's also been the kind of de facto minister for the IMF, if you like. That he's now leaving that post, but there is that role in its reports into Rachel Reeves. Blast from the past, Sam. Remember Jenny Chapman, Baroness Chapman, who was on Keir Starmer's team back on the day in opposition. She is now Minister for Africa and International Development. So she's been speaking about Britain's position on that, which is a bit tricky when we're heading down to 0.3% in our aid budget, down from 0.5 when Labour came into power. So as you can see, this IMF outing, you really get to sort of showcase a bit of where you want to stand in the global economy. Someone said it's Davos for grown-ups. If you're that kind of grown up, thinking in the financial world. And this time, I think it is very much for Rachel Reeves about a backdrop to pitch rolling the budget at home. And I've just got to ask you what you make of this language, because I'm still, still slightly reeling from the scaremongering, and the bleating is very acidic. Possibly, I think Rachel Reeves is a bit more reactive. I think she's had a tough year, and I think she's sometimes just letting things out a bit more. She used to be supremely controlled in her language, didn't she? She never gave any hostages to fortune. Whereas this, well, she's making clear where she's going to go. I think she's decided it is a dividing line. She is going to go for prosperous pension holders, investors, people who attract capital gains tax, that kind of thing. And I think she's just decided she might as well lean into it. What do you make of it?
The front page of The Guardian sort of sets it out. She says that those who opposed all of the measures on things like VAT on private schools and various non-dom measures last year were responsible for scaremongering and bleating. So she's picked a side politically. Right. Now, I'm going to say something that's not going to make myself very popular. If you are trying to work out what the Chancellor is going to do on November the 26th, I would spend almost no time considering the Chancellor's words on the front page of The Guardian. I think they have very, very little real meaning. Why is this? Well, of course, she doesn't give detail. We're weeks away from the detail. And I would just approach this with maximum cynicism. Rachel Reeves is sending a very loud message. If you talk to people who have done the kind of IMF World Bank circuit with the Chancellor in years gone by, you know that you have to do two things: the meetings to steady people's nerves, and you also do a round of media interviews, and the audience for that is back home. And what Rachel Reeves is doing, I think, is sending a political message to her base. Don't worry, I'm on your side. Brackets, stop criticizing me. Don't go around criticizing me in public. This is simply about shoring up a political flank. And I do not think that when we get to the budget on November 26th, it will feel like that statement is the totality. The measures that she is hinting about, look, bluntly, many of them don't raise very much money. You're not going to fill a 20, 30, 40 billion pound black hole with the kind of small beer kind of measures that I think she's hinting at. I think this is simply a political act. You go into this round of interviews with a big, bold message, and it's a political message. My very strong sense is that they do not know quite how they are going to deal with the vast majority of what they need to do. There appears to be some pitch rolling from Number 10 that they may break some of their manifesto promises on the big taxes, income tax, national insurance, VAT. If you talk to Labour MPs, they're hearing this. Number 10 wouldn't rule out breaking manifesto pledges yesterday either. that would dwarf any talk of sort of bits here and there on wealth taxes. This is plain and simple a political technique to try and buy herself some time with her own side. I talked yesterday to Louise Haigh. She's the former cabinet minister. And alarm bells were ringing for Louise Haigh because of what Rachel Reeves told me the previous day on spending. Listen to this.
It's very worrying to hear about spending cuts, presumably in unprotected departments, for example, local government. These are departments that cannot bear any further spending cuts than they've already experienced over the last several years. We've come out of 15 years of austerity. These are not areas that can bear further spending cuts.
So yeah, there is concern about what Rachel Reeves is saying and how she's saying it and the doom loop. And now Rachel is saying something that most Labour MPs want to hear. And I think that there's nothing more to it than that. It's a bit of political crowd pleasing.
I think that's very smart, because what you're reminding us, Sam, is there could be some sleight of hand going on here. That, of course, and I must say, if so, I fell straight into the trap, because I was, wow, this is just such harsh language, and some of it, frankly, I mean, some of it doesn't even really add up in Rachel Reeves's own terms, when she says things like VAT and private school fees, and the bleating. That was really what the bleating quote was about. It wasn't going to raise the money. Well, the reason it raised the money is because a lot of people took their children out of private school and put them into state schools. So actually, the money sort of does have a habit of coming back to needing to be prepaid for in education, etc. But I think what you're reminding us of is those spending cuts that she probably feels she needs to shore up some support. If I'm understanding you correctly, that by saying we did these things, we went after your ancestral foes, people who, you've got a little list, people who use private schools and non-dorms and etc., but that it would buy her some space. That is really interesting. But I did notice that Lindsay Hoyle, who's on fire at the moment, the comments speak, he's cross with everyone. He's very cross with Rachel Reeves for making these comments. You are right. There is an audience at home when you speak at the IMF. This is the most domestically focused, small bore kind of a positive way, good for the Guardian for getting it, interview. It's not common to give this kind of interview on the sidelines of the IMF, put it that way. So for whatever reason, she felt she needed to do it.
I think the biggest clue of what she's doing and the politics of it is the fact it's to the Guardian. You think, what is the line I want to give the Guardian? You give it to the Guardian, and you hope that Labour MPs notice. You've got to look at what they do rather than what they say, Anne. If you turn to page 40 of this morning's Times, you get a hint of what's going on. The headline there: boost for city bankers as bonus rules are loosened. And that's the Financial Conduct Authority and the Bank of England basically telling the wealthiest that they only have to wait 4 years rather than 8 years to collect their bonus, right? So how does that square with the Guardian front page? It absolutely doesn't. Look at what they do, and I don't think they know what they're going to do yet. And I think that's absolutely key. Should we turn to China?
It's all so complicated, this Rachel Reeves budget. Let's turn to something easy, like China and the China spy case that wasn't.
The witness statements promised by Keir Starmer arrived just before 10 o'clock last night, and they are the statements that were provided by government, by the Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins, in the prosecution case against former parliamentary researcher Christopher Cash and academic Christopher Berry. Now, it's fair to say that these documents have left people confused, right? So one of the things we were trying, that there's been an almighty row about for weeks, is the suggestion from the CPS that it dropped the case because the government, because Matthew Collins wouldn't describe China as a threat. But he does. Collins, in those documents, in black and white, says that China is a threat to our people, prosperity, and security. And he also says China has large-scale espionage operations which threaten our, quote, economic prosperity, resilience, and the integrity of our democratic institutions. So all of that is pretty clear. He does also say that government was committed to pursuing a positive relationship with Beijing. But the sense I'm getting this morning is MPs are going, well, hang on, if all of that was in black and white in the documents supplied by government, why didn't the CPS proceed with the prosecution? Isn't there a world in which the DPP, Stephen Parkinson, could have taken this before a jury and tested it out? Is he maybe the one that went a bit cold on all of this? What do you make of it?
Well, the Deputy National Security Advisor, who's really found himself in the eye of the storm, Matthew Collins here, it so much comes down to the way that he was using words in a particular uh, context. And when we see this outlined, and Playbook has a good account this morning, I should say I'm freely leaning on my colleagues here who've been through this. I'm sure you also have with a fine tooth comb overnight. The way that he is outlining the case that it was going to be brought, was intended to be brought against the former parliamentary researcher Christopher Cash and the academic Christopher Berry. I mean, the key point is that the context was not just that they were involved in something quite low level. They're accused of collaborating with very senior Chinese Communist Party figure who was deputy director of the Center for National Security Commission, which is directly chaired by President Xi Jinping himself. So this is high grade stuff. And there is also really, I was about to say an arresting line. That's a bit of an unfortunate pun, but there it is. When Cash is alleged to have told Berry in a message, "You're in spy territory now." Now, both men firmly deny any wrongdoing. And Cash put out a statement last night, which I think is intended to say in terms, because he uses some language which is very similar to the government's language on a positive relationship with China. Why are you, getting on my case? This is what you wanted, a positive relationship with China, lots of flow of information, conversation. Let's get to understand each other better. But it's quite odd to have someone who, 1 minute was coming very close to facing a court case because of contacts at this level, which I think is higher than a lot of us thought on the Chinese side. And at the same time, to be using language which is very directly leaning on, you might even say taken from Labour itself. And that's why Kemi Badenoch is pointing again and again to this and saying this is all falling apart under scrutiny.
Can I be honest, Anne? I am really struggling to care about the nuances of the collapse of this case. I know I shouldn't say that as a journalist, but I doubt that the public have really noticed it. I think that issues to do with China and the UK are of massive importance. I am not sure, for instance, Kemi Badenoch's decision to go on this subject at PMQs yesterday will have excited the passions of the British voter. And it doesn't really excite me at all, if I'm being honest. Yes, I do care about the UK and China. I'm not sure that this case and the back and forth between the government and CPS is the prism through which I'm really learning anything anymore. There are some amazing stories out there, however. Tim Shipman in The Spectator has published a piece about all sorts of scandals involving China and Russia that have been swept under the carpet. And he's reported something that I've heard about as well, about how a Chinese firm was able to buy a data hub used by Whitehall departments to share info. I mean, I heard about that yesterday as well. The Chinese appear to have managed to get ownership of a data center by creating a whole series of shell companies, of which China was the ultimate owner. There's a bit of an argument about whether this data hub contained super sensitive data. I'm told that it did. I think government sources deny that. But the Chinese may well have got all sorts of stuff by the back door. The front page of the Times reports Dominic Cummings saying the same. There are some government sources out there denying that. That's the stuff I'm interested in. I'm really struggling to think that the public kind of were wowed by PMQs yesterday.
You see, I just love any small ball stuff that involves our dealings with autocracies. And I think this is probably a prisoner of my past, of all that time spent in communist countries. But look, I completely understand. I don't think as you say, you're not going to go down to whatever the dog and duck is these days, your local spoons, and find yourself probably sitting next to a table talking about why the CPS case collapsed in detail.
We will differ on that.
It's always good to have a difference. It wakes me up.
China Spy Case Redux podcasts. However, it has been a monumental few weeks for both of us and for this podcast. We've been on the road together and it's been a lot of fun. We've got a little thing about next week to tell you, but here's just a flavour of what you've had over the last few weeks on Politics at Sam and Anne's.
Hello from Liverpool and the first day of Labour Party conference.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome from Manchester and the first day of the Conservative Party conference. Anne and I are here.
Do you want to explain how he's going to go about it?
Let me go into it with the help of one Lib Dem veteran who I was talking to over a round of crazy golf yesterday, which is the best place here in Bournemouth to find out what's really going on.
Looks like it's going okay, is it?
I'm sorry I couldn't quite wait for this podcast before getting this out last night, but it's a little exclusive just for you, Anne.
But what's your opening impression?
2027. One date. That's what we were intended to take away.
And you can hear in the background one of these vast trolleys that are pushed around. They're there to kind of move around the vast quantities of alcohol that gets consumed at party conference.
I wish you a happy park run as I slope towards my hotel breakfast.
So both Anne and I are miles away from Westminster on Monday. So we're actually going to skip an episode, I'm afraid, and we'll be back with you on Tuesday. It's a longer than average break for me. Anne, how are you going to cope?
Well, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I will prepare something else that we can have a little fight about when you get back.
Look forward to it. We will see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.